Salam Sejahtera and welcome to another edition of Perception, where we discuss current issues that are daily topics of concerned discussion among multicultural Malaysians of all walks of life. Ladies and gentlemen, our topic of discussion today is Bersih, where do we go from here? And to discuss this subject, we have with us Yang Berhormat Mr. R. Sivarasa, the Honourable Member of Parliament for Subang. YB,
thank you.
On behalf of TV Pass, I thank you for taking time and being with us on this edition of Perception.
And thank you for having me here this morning.
YB, what is the true significance and message of the massive multiracial turnout at the July 9th Bersih rally?
I think that was one of the special things about Bersih 2.0. We know that the previous large rallies in 2007, Bersih 1 was perhaps 90% Malay turnout. Hindraf was practically 100% Indian turnout. This time Bersih 2.0, I think unanimously was acclaimed as One Malaysia. I've had this feedback from diplomats, journalists, so many. It's amazing. It was majority Malay, of course, but the face of Malaysia was there, and it was amazing to see the young Chinese faces in a large number, and all walks of life. Like you had the young, the old, and you also had all classes. The rich and the poor. What I think Barisan Nasional has a lot to worry about with this happening. You're seeing, I think Pak Samad, if I can quote Pak Samad's side, and I think he put it very well when he said, and based on what he saw, he said it's very clear that all the races of Malaysia and from all walks of life are united on this clear message claiming for electoral reform and better democracy in Malaysia. And I think that's the significance of what we saw. If I were in Barisan Nasional's shoes, I would be quite concerned about what's going to happen.
YB, Malaysians living abroad were in unity and solidarity with what was happening at home by holding Bersih rallies at international capitals around the world. What is your understanding of this global Malaysian phenomenon?
It's very encouraging. We saw simultaneous rallies on the same day. On the same day at different times, of course, because of the time zones, in about 30 cities at least. In Australia alone, Sydney, Adelaide, Melbourne, Perth, for example. And it signals, I think, something very encouraging, that the Malaysian diaspora, and this is not just our students, this is the hundreds of thousands of Malaysians who have left this country for better pastures, fed up with the situation here, the political conditions, the lack of democracy, the perceived police state, and they're sending a strong message that they are Malaysians, they are concerned about the country, they care for the country, and I think that's the best message. This is far better than all these efforts the BN is trying to do about bringing people back. These people out there telling us they care, but they're also telling us change the country, democratize the country, and I think they will be back here. They're signaling they're prepared to partner with this country, to be back here to support us, and it's very encouraging to see this entire diaspora on the move that day.
YB, now that the July 9th Bersih rally is over, where do we go from here to realize the desired electoral reforms?
That's an excellent question, and it brings us down to also, we need to come down to reality, with that question. We must recognize the Barisan Nasional has remained in power for many years, for decades, by using that system. Especially in the last 20 years, I think the system has evolved into a manifestly unfair, unfree, and unfair system. And that's what keeps them in power. And they are not going to change that system and lose power. We must recognize that. So the battle is on, but the battle is not going to be easy. The challenges are immense. We have to keep the pressure. People are already asking when's Bersih, the next Bersih, the next big rally. and I'm convinced we will have to do it. We'll have to allow a few months to, we have to be reasonable, give the government some time, give the BN, give the EC, but who the EC will basically look to BN for the nod, which way to go, and keep the pressure up. My sense of it is if we keep the pressure and we keep mobilizing public opinion, they may concede on some aspects. And it is imperative that we reach the next general election, the 13th general election, with some basic changes. For me, issues like indelible ink, issues like the postal vote are fundamental. These are key aspects of the cheating that is going on, and connected to the irregularities in the voter roll. So this is where we must focus and keep up the pressure.
YB, what is your perception of the video footage screened by the police on the Bersih rally?
I think what we can say immediately is the word selective. It's amazing what they picked. Trying to show Tian Shui and a few people running to avoid tear gas shots. What's that about? That's nothing. What is amazing, and I spent the Saturday was the rally. I spent a lot of Sunday, Monday, like most people, watching a lot of the footage. There's so much footage on the net, and it's amazing. I also saw what happened in '98 and '99, where I think people were visibly more angry. But this time, what is remarkable about this gathering is the sheer peaceful tone. You have scenes of people sitting down peacefully. You have people marching peacefully. And all the violence that I saw was police, without any provocation, kicking people in the face, beating people after arrest, before arrest. That's where the violence was. So if the police are trying to suggest the demonstrators provoked them, show me, I have not seen it, but show me a number of pictures showing demonstrators taunting, say, the police with vulgar words or with insults. You won't find that. That is what struck I think a lot of foreign observers, foreign journalists keep talking about it, how this rally was so disciplined, and the discipline also, despite the fact that there were many marshals. There were marshals, but not that many. It was quite spontaneous in certain parts of the city. People came. There was no obvious leader. People led themselves. But what is obvious from the different parts of the city where it took place, whether it's near Masjid Jamek or Jalan Pudu or Maybank, Dataran Maybank, is the discipline, the peacefulness, the goodwill that was coming out from the demonstrators. So the police videos will not, I think, shake that image. And I think the police must understand, by doing this selective presentation of a few videos, they're only damaging themselves. Their credibility is already shot, and by doing it this way, they're going to destroy whatever little credibility they have.
YB, there is this call by the Deputy IGP that everyone should stop discussion on the Bersih rally because it will cause fear among the people. Public perception is that the Deputy IGP has got no respect for multiracial Malaysia, who demands transparency and accountability at all levels of governance. What is your view of this call by the Deputy IGP?
I wish that he and and some of his colleagues, not all, but some of them who echo his views, have to wake up to the current reality of Malaysian political reality. Look at those thousands on the street, the tens of thousands, and try to understand what they're saying. And that's like exactly what you said. They want transparency. They're not going to fall for this old propaganda that the races of Malaysia are about to quarrel at the slightest provocation of some small spilled milk on the ground. It's not like that. The immense racial goodwill that existed, and you can read this in the hundreds of Bersih stories that are coming out in the net, how people helped each other because the cause was one. As some sides say, the cause was one. Everybody was united in the cause. We want democracy, we want electoral reform. So Chinese help Malaysia, everybody is helping each other because you're in a common challenging scenario. You're facing tear gas, or you're being beaten, or you're being chased, and they helped each other. And so And they overcame fear. The thousands came out despite the fact that a few days before that you saw this propaganda on the television. They were putting up images, they put banners up saying the army will be coming out to shoot people if they didn't disperse and so on. People didn't buy it. And I think this is what the Deputy IGP has to understand. Stop behaving like thugs, stop behaving like bullies, and try to understand that today the Malaysian populace is changed. It's not what it was 40 years ago, 50 years ago. It's maturing. They have, and they know their rights, and they are much more aware. And it's the police now that have to adjust to this reality.
YB, after bringing global disrepute to Malaysia with your unprofessional handling of the Bersih rally, the Ministry of Home Affairs has now confirmed to all Malaysians and the rest of the world that the ministry is run by dim-witted nincompoops with the latest shameful saga of blackening out parts of an article on Bersih featured in The Economist.
Yes.
Public perception is that the incompetent Minister of Home Affairs should resign immediately to prevent further global ridicule and condemnation to Malaysia. What is your view of this public perception?
Well, if I were the Prime Minister and Hishammuddin were my Home Minister, I would ask him to resign. But I think the reality is, we must see that it's not just Hishammuddin who has to take responsibility for this, even Najib, the Prime Minister, has to take responsibility. And we have seen from day one of this entire episode, from the time Bersih announced that they would be doing the rally on the 9th of July, the Barisan National Government, and that's Hishammuddin must take full responsibility, have mishandled it at every step. It would have been so easy for them to have said, fine, we'll allow the rally to happen, and they would have looked so good in the eyes of the world. But instead of that, even after the King's intervention and the compromise that Bersih made, Bersih compromised and said, yes, since the King wishes it, we will go to the stadium. And then the Prime Minister says, pick your stadium. So Bersih picked Merdeka Stadium. And then you about turn and say no. The police say no permit. And then you inflict violence on the crowd on that day. A peaceful crowd, very visibly peaceful to the whole world watching. So what we have demonstrated to the world, and this is the problem. We were trying, Najib is going around the world trying to look like a moderate, leader of a Muslim majority country, moderate, liberal, democratic country, has elections and so on, recognizes human rights. We're sitting on the UN Human Rights Council, and we are duty bound to, respect human rights. So he goes around the world saying that. But having seen what happened on the 9th of July, he has demolished his entire own propaganda, single-handedly. And that's Hishammuddin has to take responsibility. The real ugly face of the Malaysian police state was seen to all the world on the 9th of July.
YB, we will take a short break now. To our respected audience, we trust you will be with us when we return and continue our discussion. Bersih, where do we go from here? With Yang Berhormat, Mr. R. Sivarasa, Honourable Member of Parliament for Subang. Welcome back to Perception, where we will continue our discussion. Bersih, where did we go from here? With Yang Berhormat, Mr. R. Sivarasa, Honourable Member of Parliament for Subang. YB, the public is still seething with anger at PDRM over their ruthless and vindictive onslaught on the riot at the Bersih rally. As a respected lawyer, what are the charges that the riot can initiate against the police in court for their unprofessional conduct?
I can tell you, based on what the video footage shows of what the police have done, we can easily say that the police intentionally tried to cause serious injury and even death to some of the demonstrators, some of the protesters. Let me substantiate that. I'm going to use the KL Central incident and also the attack on Mat Sabu in the process of his arrest. Mat Sabu's arrest was horrific. I was in the lockup when I saw him. his knee was so badly injured that he couldn't stand. He needed two people to be his crutches and take him around the lockup. I was shocked that the doctors even sent him back to the lockup. He should have been in hospital. He was injured by the police cars deliberately knocking into his into the bike where he was knocking him off, and that's a reckless act. The man might have been killed, in the process of trying to arrest him. Why couldn't you just wait till he stopped and then arrested him? He was not going to run anywhere. He's a deputy president of PAS. He would have just surrendered himself. So that was one example. The other horrific example we have is in the KL Central incident, where the Bersih leaders and Pakatan Rakyat leaders were walking out of the underpass, which is like a tunnel. We have video footage showing the FRU troop under the command of one Bahari shooting at least 12 tear gas shells into an enclosed space. Now, I've seen the tear gas canister. It's on it. It has written. There's a written warning saying, "Do not shoot into enclosed spaces. Do not shoot directly at people." Now, as a result of that, you had 3 people. The most seriously injured was Anwar's bodyguard, personal bodyguard, who saw. In his police report, he has said he saw the guns being pointed in the direction of Anwar. He stepped in front of him to protect him, and thank God he did. He took the hit directly on his cheekbone, smashed. He spent 10 days in hospital with complicated surgery. He might have been, if it had hit his eye, he would have been blinded and even more serious injury. Khalid Samad turned away from the shooting and got hit at the back of the head, 6 stitches. Mr. Yu Bun Lai, our Klang division chief for PKR, was hit just above the eye, glasses smashed, bruises around the eye, not as serious as the others. The fact that 3 people were hit on the head in that group shows there was a deliberate attempt to fire tear gas shells directly at them and at their heads. There was clear intent to cause serious injury. And with so many shells exploded in a confined space, we've checked the research in the internet, you could have caused death. And this is what, for me, the police were under instruction, or some police officers have to take responsibility for giving that instruction to shoot that at least dozen or so tear gas shells directly into that enclosed space. Even in Jalan Pudu, I was with the crowd in Jalan Pudu. We were sitting peacefully on the road. Next thing we knew, tear gas shells are being pumped directly at us. You should be lobbing the shells in accordance with normal dispersal procedures. But here, no, one shell came streaking right past me. So it is quite clear. The conclusion was they were aiming at me and hoping to cause some injury. So then, of course, you have numerous video recorded incidents of police just kicking people's, kicking. I saw a guy sitting on the road being smashed in the face by a police boot. People being kicked on the ground when after arrest and so on. Many of these incidences have taken place. So, but the one in the Trowong, the KL Central underpass, and the Matsabo incident, I think are by far the most serious. They show that the police were intentionally trying to cause serious harm and possibly even death to the people concerned. That's very serious. That's a criminal police force. That's a police force that needs to be hauled back and made accountable. These people should be charged in court, and these are crimes for which ordinary people will go to jail for many years.
YB, let's talk about the Election Commission now. The Election Commissions claim that they are unable to realize Bersih's 8 demands because it has to go through the legislative process in Parliament. Is this true, or is it a brazen lie?
I have some strong language for it, but since I can't say it on television, it's a nonsense. Now, let's take some key areas of concern, like what I mentioned earlier: indelible ink and the postal vote system. We've been pressing for indelible ink for years because we believe the Election Commission, and together with Barisan National Parties, have been cahoots and registered people to vote more than once. People have, in other words, there are people carrying several ICs and voting several times. Now, it's a simple, low-tech, cheap answer to that: indelible ink. Indonesia, India, Afghanistan, a number of countries practice it because it's cheap and effective. The pressure on the Election Commission worked the last time because in the year before the March 2008 elections, they agreed to it. They agreed to it and they bought the ink. They spent about $2 million. But as we all know, a few days before the March 8th, there was this instruction to cancel it on some totally frivolous and falsified excuse, which was illogical, and they didn't use it. Because I think they knew if they had implemented it, it would have reduced that slight percentage of support for them, which was coming in a fraudulent manner. Now, so this is my simple answer to the EC when they say we need legislative changes. You did it before. You didn't talk about legislative changes. So you're obviously talking nonsense now by saying we have to do legislative changes, say for doing indelible ink. Even the postal vote. All these procedures are regulated by regulations under the election laws, not acts of parliament. So, and we know the system. Regulations are done simply by decree. The election commission and the AG chamber sits down and drafts it, and all they're required to do under the law is they just present it in parliament. Present means they just leave it on our table. So in the last sitting, for example, we had new regulations tabled by the election commission under the relevant law, where, for example, they reduced the 3-day period where you can pull back your nomination to 1 day. That was done without amending an act of parliament, but simply by regulations done by decree and placed in front of our table. It's law. So this is another example. So as far as we are concerned, all the major areas of concern, the irregularities in the electoral roll, the absurd postal voting system which allows massive cheating on the part of the postal voters, which are almost 300,000 voters, the use of indelible ink, all this can be achieved without any legislative changes, i.e. amendments to acts of parliament. So I don't know what kind of legal advisors they're employing, but I would advise them, sack your legal advisors and stop repeating this nonsense.
YB, the day after the Bersih rally, the Deputy Prime Minister was mooing about Bersih's not appreciating the efforts of our founding fathers who fought for our independence. YB, did our founding fathers cheat and hold unfair elections, or is it a peculiar dysfunctional hallmark of your political grandsons today?
Well, in a way it's good that the DPM is mentioning our founding fathers. I wish he would look to them genuinely, sincerely, and follow what they did. For example, On bin Jaafar, Faiz's own father. Now, when the opposition to the Malayan Union was organized, after the British proposal, massive, large, peaceful decisions organized by them, and allowed by the British without any issues. Why can't they follow that? This was what our founding fathers did in the exercise of democracy, and even to that extent allowed by the British. But you see what's the difference now, how they handled the Bersih rally. Our first elections in this country under the colonial period, under the British colonizers, was in 1955 when we did municipal elections, and then in 1959 when we had our first general elections. Now, I think any objective observer will say this: we had far more democratic space then compared to now. And for example, the campaign period was far longer than what we have. Bersih is asking for that much more than 21 days. The media was much more balanced. Much more space was accorded to the opposition. Everybody got on. At that time it was mainly radio and print media. Television was less important, but the space was there. Today, no. Today, you don't hear any of the key opposition leaders, Anwar Ibrahim Kitsiang, Hadia Wang, on national television or the radio, where it is. Today, you must understand, the modern world, modern politics is in television. But this is where Malaysia is primitive and backward. The other aspect, distortions of the electoral system, gerrymandering, which is rife now, at that time was not there. The constitution provided there should not be a major imbalance between urban seats and rural seats. All that was respected. So, back to the DPM, I would say, if you want to mention our founding forefathers, then mention them with respect and honor and practice what they did.
YB, the Elections Commission, let's come back to them. The demand is for the indelible ink, but the Elections Commission is braying about the biometric system. What are your views on the matter?
Okay, a biometric system is in theory, it is some sort of a solution, but it is it'll be very, very expensive to implement. It'll take a lot of time. It'll take fairly sophisticated IT systems, which I don't think we are even capable of doing. Our current IT systems, as far as for the election commission are concerned, are so backward. I'll give you an example. The electoral roll that we are allowed to buy today doesn't even have complete house addresses. They can't even give us that. So what are they talking about? Implementing complex biometric systems, right? So I doubt very much that they even have the capacity in the first place, and you're going to be spending a huge amount of money. As opposed to that, you have a simple, low-tech, cheap and effective system called indelible ink to prevent the basic problem of multiple voting, i.e. a person voting more than once. That is the cheating we are trying to prevent. Now, in a biometric system, it may not even stop that, because I could go to one voting station, they will check my thumb or eye or whatever and say I'm so and so, and I'll present an IC saying I'm so and so, they will allow me to vote. I go to another place, it could very well happen again. It all depends on whether that the system is there, and if the system is not organized, even a biometric system won't stop it. Whereas an indelible ink system, where you have the ink that will stay on your hand for a few days, will cut it out. Of course, I know people argue I can go and use chemicals and take out the ink. Yes, a few might. A few totally committed individuals who want to commit fraud might. But I can safely say this based on experience of other electoral systems, 95% of the fraud will be stopped by a simple low-tech measure. So our message to the Election Commission is stop, the biometric system is not what we need. Maybe sometime in the distant future when we have upgraded our systems. But right now it's very simple. Just buy and implement indelible ink.
YB, public perception is that PM Najib and his UMNO BN must be blamed squarely for the pathetic, impotent incompetence of the Elections Commission to conduct free and fair elections. Would you agree with such a public perception?
I think they have to take full responsibility for the situation. The federal constitution says that the Agong will appoint an election commission that enjoys the confidence of the people. Clearly, this election commission does not enjoy the confidence of the people as an impartial referee of the electoral system. And why? Because over the last 20 to 30 years, but I will only qualify one aspect of your question. I don't think the blame can be attributed fairly just to Najib. In other words, it's not just Najib. This is what I consider as the legacy of the Mahathir era. Mahathir's 22 years has really brought us to what we have. So PM Abdullah Badawi and PM Najib are really just carrying on what is really entrenched by PM Mahathir. Where I think Mahathir is the one where you can see in the 22 years he systematically took away our civil rights, reduced our political rights, reduced our democratic space. And I think he's the one who basically irreparably damaged our key institutions. And that's from the judiciary, the AG's chambers, and the Election Commission would be one of them. So, Najib is responsible for what happened recently, but I don't think we can put the full blame of the abysmal state of the Election Commission completely on his shoulders. I think a lot would go to Mahathir, and what Najib can be blamed for is that his talk about reform, political economic reform, is completely hypocritical, because it's all talk. At least Mahathir never pretended. That's the good thing you can say about. That's the thing you can say about him. He didn't pretend. He was a tough autocrat, and he had no qualms about doing it. Najib, on the other hand, is pretending to the world to be a liberal democrat, but is actually continuing to maintain the police state and the authoritarian systems.
YB, the public is full of glowing praise and admiration for Queen Elizabeth, for greeting PM Najib and his wife at Buckingham Palace with a yellow dress and yellow flowers. Public perception is that Queen Elizabeth was in body, mind and spirit with the Malaysian rakyat, while she played host to Malaysia's perceived number one stumbling block to free and fair elections. How do you see it?
Well, that was certainly a wonderful scene to see on the internet. The photograph of her greeting, Najib and Rosma in that yellow dress. And I would really wonder what was in Najib's and Rosma's mind at that time when they walked into the room, and saw that yellow dress. Honestly, at the first time I saw it, I thought this must be a coincidence. But having then thought a bit more about it later, and I read this, there's an interesting article written by someone on the internet, quite persuasively arguing, in a point-by-point argument, that it was not a coincidence. That the royal family of England, as far as they're concerned, all their public actions are scripted to the nth detail, and dress and colors, what hat you wear, what shoes you wear, what you say, how you sit, what you walk, everything is scripted. So, and it is a formidable argument to say that yellow dress was picked deliberately. She had to know about the color significance of the color yellow. The demonstrations in England were already reflecting the yellow color. Najib was faced with yellow demonstrations wherever he went, and it is nice to know that at least I'm persuaded now that there must have been some intent about it, and one hopes that the Prime Minister understands the message that is being sent, that people are trying to send him diplomatically the message of reform. But realistically, I think we need to understand that UMNO will not allow the reform. UMNO has got too much entrenched political and economic interest in this country. So we, the people of Malaysia who want reform, those who went on the street and for the rally, all of us cherish that idea of reform, and we want the change. But we have to be realistic that the battle is going to, the struggle is still on. The process will be long, long meaning we have not achieved it with just the Bersih rally, and we must be ready to come down again to the street and to persevere until we democratize our country.
YB, on behalf of TV Pass, I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us on this edition of Perception.
Thank you very much.
To our respected audience, we thank you for being with us throughout this discussion. Wherever you may be, I wish you a pleasant weekend and a productive week ahead. On behalf of the production crew of Perception, until we meet again next week, I wish all Malaysians, Hidup Bersih, Hidup Rakyat, Hidup Pakatan Rakyat.
Right. Was okay, yeah?
Yeah.
At least.